Welcome, and thanks for joining us for our First Fridays with the Fathers video series, where we spotlight Holy Cross men who have answered the call to become members of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. I'm Tom Cadigan, class of 2002, and the Associate Director of Alumni Relations at Holy Cross, and I've been blessed to serve as the behind-the-scenes producer of this video project. And since this is the last episode in our series, you're in for a treat. Our usual host, Father Keith Maczkiewicz, Assistant Chaplain for Liturgy at Holy Cross, and Chaplain for the first-year class of 2024, will be our featured guest for this finale. Keith's Jesuit brother, Father Jim Hayes, class of 1972, Associate Chaplain for Faith Formation, recently connected with Keith and flipped the tables a bit by asking him the questions, and I hope you enjoy. Now, a Long Island native, Keith joined the then Northeast Province of the Jesuits in 2008. As a member of the Society, his ministry has been focused on campus ministry at the college and high school level, in retreat work, and in faith formation. Now completing his second stint at Holy Cross, Keith was previously on staff in the chaplain's office from 2013 to 2015. He was ordained a priest in 2018. Now Keith holds degrees from Fairfield University, Providence College, Loyola University Chicago, and the Jesuit School of Theology in Berkeley, California. And if you followed this video series for the past few months, you certainly know that Keith is very good in front of a camera, and we are blessed for that. So thank you for joining us, and I now turn things over to Fathers Jim Hayes and Keith Maczkiewicz.
And our guest today is our familiar host, Father Keith Maczkiewicz. And I get to ask the questions of my brother, Keith.
Very dangerous, very dangerous.
So, Keith, do you recall our first meeting?
Our first meeting, yes, it was at Maggiano's in Boston. I was there as a member of the Fairfield University Glee Club. I was a junior, I think, and you were vocation director, I think?
I was vocation director, and Carol Ann Maxwell, the director, invited me for dinner that night at another restaurant, but she said, let's go over to Maggiano's and meet some of the Glee Club members. And when I met you, of course, my vocation antenna went up, and I thought, I wonder if he could be a Jesuit. And then you were reminded me of our second meeting, which was in Baltimore.
Oh, at the campus ministry conference.
That's right.
Yes.
You were working at Scranton as a layman, and I was at Holy Cross, and we had this big gathering, and I got to meet you then, and my antenna were still up. And then you came for a come and see at Holy Cross in the spring of 2005. And I was thrilled.
You know what I remember? If memory serves, Jonathan Stott, he might have been a novice with you on Long Experiment at that point.
Yes.
So I'm going to be living with him down in Fairfield. So, but I remember that vividly, that he was kind of organizing the day.
Yes, yes. So, what's it like now to be on the other end of these questions?
Well, this is with you, Jim. This is just like being at the breakfast table. So, for our viewers, Jim Hayes, it's less a conversation than an interrogation sometimes. He always wants the details, but it's very pleasant. And I'm Tom Cadigan, who's been organizing these. I would do anything for Tom, so I was happy to.
I would too. I would too. Yes, I just like to exercise curiosity. And so like me, you work closely with students through campus ministry, and this ministry during pandemic has been unusual, but you have been very creative. Could you share with our viewers some of the things that have taken up your energies?
Sure. Yeah, I'm kind of out of creativity right now, at the end of all this. But yeah, we tried multiple things and we basically just said, let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And one of the first things we said we were going to try was, as soon as we sent everybody home in March of 2020, we were very worried about students. And one of the experiences that we get some feedback on is their experience of coming together for Mass and hearing the saving word from people that they know. And so we tried this Closing the Distance video series, which we did for a lot of weeks. We basically did it from March until classes began for some in person in August or September. So it was multiple weeks. So that was one thing that took a little bit of time and attention and just trying to organize that. I end up, I'm relatively tech savvy, so I end up kind of behind the scenes for a bunch of stuff, which I call it stage managing.
Yes.
So if someone's got to share their screen and who's got to be muted and who's going to be, that takes a little bit of, and if for a person who's trying to lead digital prayer, this is a headache that they don't need. So I was very happy to kind of do the stuff in the background. Yes. But then a lot of my work, you're, of course, as a colleague, we're very familiar with the class chaplain model. And
yes,
I was class chaplain for the class of 2020. So it was a lot of trying to minister to them and the alumni office really trying to keep them engaged over the past year. So doing an event or two for them. But then I also have inherited or took up the class of 2024. So the first year class. And they've had a lot of needs this year as well. So, and thank you for taking them on in the coming years.
Well, thank you for preparing them. But don't neglect all your work with the liturgies. I mean, that has been extremely valuable.
Thanks. Yeah. So that's been I would say my primary work here is doing liturgical formation of student ministers. And you and I, we celebrate almost every week, maybe, certainly multiple times a month. So preparing homilies, that takes, I have to say, after being ordained, that is the thing that surprised me the most, how much writing I have to do.
Yes.
Because if you want to say something worthwhile,
right,
gotta work at that.
Right.
And I don't say much, as you know, I tend to, you don't preach very long either on Sundays, but it's hard to preach short.
Yes.
And say something of value,
Right.
So, but I've enjoyed my time in the chapel. This has been a strange year in COVID. I feel like staff members are doing too much, but we never know if a student's going to end up in quarantine. And right. So we've had to kind of take more ownership, which is not my preference, but it's kind of what COVID has led to.
And we've also done online retreats and soul squads. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so soul squads was an idea. We had to gather students in kind of small faith sharing groups, meeting once a week, basically preparing not really a lesson, but some sort of activity and sharing questions that we could do together.
Right.
I have two groups of first year students. And so we were, of course, remote in the fall, and then in the spring, we were at orange alert when we first got here, so there were no in-person anything. But I asked, as soon as we went to yellow, I asked permission to gather them in person, spread out, huge circle, masked, which they've really appreciated. And I just finished with one group on Sunday, and I'll finish with another group tomorrow, actually. They've really been very appreciative. And one of them, I said, can you describe soul squads in a phrase? And somebody said, it's the most dependable thing in my life right now.
Wow.
Yeah, which I was really gratified by, because, and I said to them, I don't know, I prepare something, I show up here and we talk, I don't know if this is helpful to you, we're trying whatever. But it is very clear. They just they needed a space to be, and they needed a place to go. And the fact that it was in person and building community at a time when people are really struggling to find community in COVID. So that's been really valuable, I think.
Yes. So now ministry is taking you elsewhere. Tell our audience what's next for Father Mac.
Yeah, so I've been named the next director of campus ministry and university chaplain at Fairfield University, which is my alma mater down in Connecticut. I was approached late in the fall and discerned with my provincial and people down there, and it was announced at the beginning of February. So it's been in some ways a long Irish wake. Uh, but it's I've been still very present here and trying to finish out the year, but I've also been getting pulled into meetings down there, as you can imagine. So
Well, we're all grieving, but we're happy for Fairfield. As you know, I spent 5 years at Fairfield in campus ministry, and I think they're very blessed to have you. And I hope you find it as rewarding as I do being back at my alma mater for you. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a place that's where I met the Jesuits. It's where I really came into my faith, I think. I was a transfer student there, so like it's really a place where I found a home. So in some ways, the challenge, I've been out long enough that like I'm not going to try to reestablish what worked for me. And students today, of course, are not
right.
they're much different. So like I'm going in with eyes wide open. It's just a different place now, but I'm looking forward to kind of the familiarity, especially I think of the chapel.
Yeah.
It's a great worship space. I would say it's not a devotional space like St. Joseph Memorial Chapel,
Right.
but I bet it's a nice place to preside and preach because it's kind of an intimate space. So I am looking forward to that.
That's great. And is there a program at Fairfield that really shaped you when you were there?
Yeah, I got really involved with Eucharistic ministry when I was there. I remember it was the first weekend and I went to Mass in the afternoon and sat with my roommate. It was crowded. And this older woman came over to me and she said, "Hi, I'm Carolyn. Do you have any questions?" And you know Carolyn well. And I said, "Yeah, how do you become one of those Eucharistic minister people?" So, and she said, "Well, I have a little group that we're starting. And what year are you?" And I said, "I'm a sophomore." And she said, "That is perfect." And so that was kind of it, and she kind of just pulled me in. But I got really involved in that community and I ended up being like a student leader. And
Right.
so that was really my entree into it. And
Yeah.
then I did like service trips to international and to
Right.
Appalachia. And, when my younger siblings were coming up to like apply for college, I said to them, I said, "What about Fairfield? It's not that far from home." And my siblings said, "Yeah, but every time we go to see you here, it's like we just go to church." Not interested in that at all. So they stayed much closer to home. But it may be true that my niece actually comes to Fairfield, so that might be nice.
Oh, that would be great. Yes. So we were very blessed to have you for 2 years as a regent and now 3 years as a priest. What would you say are some of the takeaways from Holy Cross that you'll carry with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm excited for the next thing, but I am also wistful about leaving here.
Yes.
I think I'm wistful too, leaving at this moment when everything's so strange, right? It would be kind of nice to end
Right.
in a normal way. But there are lots of great things about Tim O'Brien just arrived last night, who'll be joining the mission office here. And, he said, like, it's not heaven, but it's pretty darn close. And we laughed, but I understood what he said. What he means is like, it's the size is right. So like, there's just a nice community around. You really can like get to know people. This place is smaller than my public high school. So
Wow.
I would see the same people kind of out my window here, just walking past. And but the mission of the place is very unique in the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities. And so like, that is something I will take away, like the focus on mission here.
Right.
Some of the programmatic stuff, like Joe LeBran has to be given a lot of credit for this, but the 5-day spiritual exercises that have become basically a bucket list item here, it's part of the culture.
Right.
And establishing that a long time ago, that has made a huge difference in the lives of people here. So there's a lot of programmatic things, but also down in the chapel, that'll be something I will take with me as well. I was walking through there the other day, realizing I've celebrated my last Mass in the Mary Chapel, and it was
Yeah,
2020 at some point.
right,
You know,
right.
there's a sadness there. I will miss that space and what we could do in that space, certainly.
Right. So you mentioned that your high school was bigger than Holy Cross. You're from Long Island,
I am.
and but you joined the New England province at the time
Yes.
because of your experience with Fairfield.
Yes. I used to tease my novitiate classmates actually. So they were ready at that point. I entered in 2008, and it was clear we were going to be one province from on the East Coast, which we did just recently last year. And I said, guys, I'm the future. I was born in the New York province. I was educated in the New England province, but I worked in the Maryland province before I entered. So I'm the future. You
Yes,
can.
I would say you were prescient. So we Jesuits move around quite a bit, and you've had a number of moves. So tell us about some of your moves.
Yeah, we do move around a lot. So I entered in Syracuse, New York, where the novitiate is for our province. 2 years there, but even there, they send you out on what we call experiments. So it was 6 weeks there, 6 weeks here. So I went to Campion Center in Weston, where I was basically a chaplain intern for the guys in the infirmary. They sent me to Georgetown for a semester, that's where I met Phil Burrows. I worked in his division when he was the VP for Mission and Identity. Where else did they send me? They sent me to Calvary Hospital in the Bronx, where I was an orderly in a cancer hospice. That was a very difficult experiment. So yeah, Denver, right? We had it was kind of a summer for novices, like a history course, 4 weeks of that. After the hospital, I would say that was the next hardest thing they asked me to do. It's kind of an extrovert's paradise, but if you're an introvert, it was torture. It's like mandatory softball games every day. I'm just like, can I just read a book and be by myself, And the answer to that was no. But after I took vows in 2010, I was sent to Loyola Chicago for philosophy study, 3 years of philosophy, and a little bit of ministry. I worked with the Ignatian Spirituality Project doing retreats with homeless men.
Great.
It was a really great ministry. I really enjoyed that.
Wonderful.
Then I came to Holy Cross for those 2 years as a regent, and then was sent out to California to Berkeley, where I was there for 3 years to do a master's in divinity and to do a license in theology. I really love living in Berkeley. Different mode of living, but casual. I had a great rector. My superior there was excellent. And I was sad to leave there after 3 years because I really did like my time there. But I made the classic Jesuit mistake, which was I worked too fast and I told the truth. So the formation assistant, John Ronsky, class of, what was he, 88. So he was the formation assistant kind of monitoring these guys coming up. And he said, well, where are you at? And I said, I'm in great shape. I have done all my coursework. I have no courses to take my 4th year. So I just need to write this thesis. And he said, oh, that's very interesting. And about 2 weeks later, I got an email with the worst subject title you could possibly imagine. And it says, something for you to pray about.
Yes.
And it basically said, well, if you don't have classes to take, the provincial would like you to consider going back to Holy Cross. And then you can work on your thesis when you're there if you don't have classes to take. And if he had said any other place, I may have said, yeah, I don't think so. But he said Holy Cross. And I said, well, I know that place and I know the people. And I think I could envision it, like how I would do it. And I could see myself back here. And I knew it was comfortable. And so I said, I kind of jumped at it and said, sure, yeah, send me back. And I interviewed again here, and it was a good fit for everyone still. So that was my luck. And so I've been back now for 3 years.
And our blessing. And for the audience, I want you to know that he got summa cum laude on his thesis. So it took a while, but you got it done and you did it well.
Thank you. This is for the viewers as well. Jim he likes to tout people's accomplishments. So Emily Rower Davis here in the chaplain's office, class of '99. Jim is very quick to say she was valedictorian.
And now you're going to be a little closer to Long Island and closer to your parents. And how does that feel?
Yeah, it feels good. You know, to be quite honest, you know, there were several things in my discernment, and one was, you know, I'll be 40 years old next year, and I feel like I could be doing more for the society, and but that requires a different experience and different skills and things like that. But I would say the pandemic has also put things into perspective. My parents, of course, are not getting any younger. They are retirement age, and I hadn't seen them since Christmas of 2019, and I saw them just a week and a half ago. And it was very emotional to reconnect with them. And, you know, we're not on the other side of the world. They're only 4 hours, but 4 hours, you know, an 8-hour day of travel is not,
right.
It's not really feasible.
Yeah.
Fairfield's twice as, it's half the distance. So I could conceivably see them, you know, in a day, you know, and have a good visit. And, you know, a lot of my family is still on Long Island. So most of my nieces and 2 of my siblings. And, so it'd be nice just to be a little bit closer to home as everyone's, you know, coming of age and getting a little older. So
sure. That's great. So one of the questions that you have posed to us in these interviews is, who do we look up to? Who are the people that have influenced you over the years? What Jesuits stand out in your formation?
Yeah, it was an interesting question to ask. I mean, it is a very common thing that guys my generation talk about. John Andrews, when he had very specific people he wanted to name, and he had really thought about that question. Yes. Tim was much more political. He was, oh, I don't want to name names. I want to leave anybody out. But you'll remember, I hope, in our first meeting, I said you were one of my heroes.
Yes, I was so honored.
Oh, yes. Well, because I've always appreciated your the work that you do here and your steadfastness. Like, you know, you're not getting any younger either. None of us are. And you're just like, well, here we go. Head down. We're going to get on to the next thing, you know. And even in COVID, you were just like, well, one day at a time. Here we are, you know. But I think also Paul Harmon has been a big hero of mine. Yes. And Joe O'Keefe, who I interviewed, I think his interview will be live soon. He mentioned Paul as well. I have great love for Paul.
Right.
Paul gave me the most gentle correction I ever got. When I was leaving Holy Cross, we have this process where anonymous letters are basically written just to give us a little feedback. But if you know, if you're savvy, you can figure out who wrote what.
And you are savvy, so.
And Paul wrote, Keith should read more novels. And I think about that all the time because it was a way of challenging me to say, like, you would prefer the world to be black and white. And there is a deep part of me that would prefer that, right? Just to have it clear. And sure. Paul said, like, but the world is not like that. And if you read more novels, you will be introduced into more worlds that are gray. And I never have forgotten that. And I carry that around with me a lot.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so Paul, just a lot of wisdom there. John McGarry was my rector out in Berkeley, and John treated men in formation as if they were real men. And sometimes that is not always how it's done. He didn't look at us as if we had nothing to offer, but that we were like a wealth of information and experiences. And I always admired that. And the thing I tote around from him is he would say, look, there's going to be challenges in Jesuit life and in your personhood, but you need to be very attentive to your humanity. If you don't attend to your humanity, it's going to come out sideways. And I think about that all the time. You know, that was just very, very good advice. Howard Gray was very good to me, the late Howard Gray at Georgetown when I was there. And I asked to see him for like supervision for like a retreat in daily life we were doing. Very young in Jesuit life, I was asked if I would direct the long retreat, the 30-day exercises. And I went back to Georgetown to see him. It was the summer after I took my first vows. And I said, do you have any advice? I don't really know what I'm doing. And his only advice was, you're not in charge. The Holy Spirit is in charge. And it took all the pressure off, and I really did appreciate that. And I grieved when he died. He was not young, he was in his 80s, but kind of died tragically in a car accident just a few years ago.
Right.
And Brad Schaefer preached at his funeral, and the transcript I read said, I hope we all meet the God that Howard Gray preached about.
Yes.
It was such a beautiful sentiment. And I think anyone who knew Howard knew exactly what Brad was saying, and could that resonated with people.
That's wonderful. Howard he was my tertiary director, and but I met him when I was a novice, and so he's definitely one of our mutual heroes. So
yeah. And a gentle guy. I remember when the day I arrived at Georgetown, he had the daily mass. I didn't know who he was, and he preached about the grace to love, and he said very simply, when I was provincial, I didn't even like some of these guys, so every day I had to pray for the grace. Give me the grace to love these men, please.
Right.
It was such a great and memorable homily, but also so human, and that's what I came to really enjoy about Howard.
One of the lines that Howard shared in a talk once that I was in the audience for was, people are hoping that from Jesuits that it will be a love that can be trusted.
Yes.
And unfortunately, many of our brother priests have violated that. But it's something that I hold on to, that we might love in a way that's trustworthy.
Yes. I did the entry for the vow of chastity for that encyclopedia that Tom Worcester edited. And I was asked to do the entry for the vow of chastity, and I included that phrase because it was definitely stressed when I was a novice. I mean, it was like coming out, but just a few years after the major scandal broke in 2002, this was a constant refrain, and how do you become an integrated man?
Right.
And if you're not integrated, you're not going to be able to love in a way that people can trust. And no, I identify with that very strongly.
So I think because of the pandemic, we are really called to be people of hope. What are some of the things that give you hope, Keith?
I think working with young people, that's always a source of hope for me. It's one of the challenges about working in higher ed is that we get older and they are always the same age.
That's right.
They're always 18 to 22.
Right.
But we are not. But I think just their energy it's infectious and very hope filled. They ask a lot of good questions.
Yes.
They are engaged for the most part. I think I have been very privileged to walk with students who have trusted me, and intergenerational trust gives me hope. And I hope I have mirrored that in the community, of the Jesuit community, because we have a very intergenerational house.
That's correct.
So like that, I find, is what gives me hope. Constantly looking towards the horizon, like that is our faith, right? It's like we live here, we have to live here and do our best here. But like at the end of the day, this world is passing away, and our hope is in Christ.
That's right.
Whom we trust will rise, will return and bring us all with him, and so I know that sounds like pious, but I deeply believe it.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, when people lose hope, it's because they've lost sight of the horizon. So for me, it's always looking down the road,
Well, that is a wonderful, hopeful note to end on. Keith, I want to thank you for this time now, but also for your service over 5 years here at my alma mater. You have really done great work, and you've been a wonderful colleague. And I think Fairfield is so fortunate to have you in their midst. So good luck, God bless, and vaya con Dios.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's a real privilege and a pleasure I've had to work alongside you, to live with you, and then to take part in this conversation. These have been fun. Tom,
Yes.
Kat, and I were doing them all year, and I was glad we started with you, and I'm happy to end with you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And thank you all for joining us for First Fridays with the Fathers.